My name is Jerry Gill, and today is October 10, 2008. I'm visiting for the second time with Dr. Henrietta Mann in Weatherford, Oklahoma. The interview is part of the O State Storage Project, the Oklahoma Oral History Research Program. Dr. Mann, after teaching in California, when we visited earlier, you come back to Oklahoma. What brought you back to Oklahoma and Oklahoma State University?
Well, I taught at the University of California, Berkeley, but I left there to go teach at the University of Montana.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually taught at the University of Montana off and on for 28 years. But I left there at one time to go teach in the Graduate School of Education at Harvard University. And then I took some time off to go and direct the Office of Indian Education Programs for the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and also served as a visiting professor and interim dean of instruction for Haskell Indian Nations University. So that the University of Montana was a springboard, just like Oklahoma State University was, to new challenges, new experiences in the field of Indian education. And I retired from the Montana University system, but very specifically from Montana State University in 2003. But in 2000, I left the University of Montana to accept and fill an endowed chair at Montana State University, an endowed chair in Native American Studies. Well, that's the pinnacle that university professors, I think, strive to achieve, and I had to go and fill that endowed chair. It was an honor for me to be asked to be the first person to serve in that position, and I did. And when I retired, it was a 3 year chair. I decided I didn't know what I was going to do. And the president of Montana State University said, I absolutely cannot let you go. You have to stay on. And that's where I'm at right now on a post retirement contract, working as a special assistant to Montana State University. Well, I had been involved with the Cheyenne and Arapaho tribes in the area of education for most of the time that I've been gone. And they passed a resolution to establish a tribal college. They passed a resolution to establish a board of regents. I was asked to serve on that board of regents, and I did so willingly, and commuted from Montana here to serve as a board of regents, and then as work on developing the Cheyenne and Arapaho Tribal College progressed, I ended up being asked to serve as their interim president, which I did, but I was still located in Montana. And finally, I decided this isn't working. Either they're going to have to find a president that is going to be there full time, or we're going to have to work out something different. The president for whom I work at Montana State University says, we have to support tribal colleges in their development. And right now, since you're a Cheyenne and Arapaho and you're needed down there, then by all means, uh, we'll do what we can to make sure that you're there. And I said, but what about my options of returning? He said, well, we can continue as it is and you go back and forth and do what you can for the college from a distance. Or at the other extreme, you might just decide to say, I quit and leave Montana State University altogether and leave Montana. Or he said we can develop a compromise position. The big compromise position that I have is I give you a leave of absence and you go down to assume the presidency of the university for a year, and now it's 2 years. He said, and then you come back. So that is what brought me back into Cheyenne and Arapaho country, brought me back to Oklahoma, brought me back in contact with Oklahoma State University, where I received my master's degree. And when I drove there to accept the alumni award and to go back to the student powwow, I thought, there's good memories here. This is a good place. It was a good place to pursue my education. They prepared me well.
Right.
And
Could you take us, Dr. Mann, through a little bit of, again, maybe stepping back before Montana, when you were at the conversation we had previously, you were teaching there, I think, in middle school in Barstow, California. And then the next thing, you come back to Oklahoma, I think, and then Oklahoma State. Can you kind of tell us a little about your career there and how you got back to Oklahoma and started your master's program at Oklahoma State?
Well, I graduated with a bachelor's degree in education from Southwestern Oklahoma State University. I was determined to be a teacher. And my mother lived in California. I wanted to spend time with her after graduation, and I went to Los Angeles, and I got there and began looking around for teaching positions, and finally found one at Barstow, California, and taught in the middle school. Taught social studies, reading, and English. And ultimately, I decided that California wasn't where I wanted to establish my career, and came back home to Oklahoma, married, and my husband was a student at Oklahoma State University, Okmulgee. And got a.
Where'd you meet him? Is there a story there a little bit?
Oh, I met him here. He was Cheyenne and Arapaho. I met him in our homeland here, actually in Oklahoma City. I guess it's still a part of our homeland. And he was Cheyenne and Arapaho. And so we married, and he was in school at Okmulgee and applied for a job at Oklahoma State University in the Public Information Office and got the job. And so we moved to Stillwater. The rest is history.
When you were there, you went back to Oklahoma State. Did you then think at that time about starting your master's program? Did you start about the same time?
I did. I had actually started my master's program here at Southwestern Oklahoma State University, and then never really completed it. And when we moved to Stillwater and relocated our family, and this was in the early 60s, it was the most natural thing for me. I worked in the art department as a secretary and began taking classes, and finally in 1970, I was at the thesis stage before that, of course, and I thought, oh, now I got a master's degree. What do I do? And I had always wanted to teach in Indian students. But I did not want to teach in a Bureau of Indian Affairs school, just in terms of my own mindset, because in my estimation, they hadn't done a very good job of educating Indian young people for life. But I wanted to teach Indian students, and became aware of a new discipline on college campuses in California, in places like the University of California, Berkeley, and other of their units, and at San Francisco State University. And it was about that time that American Indians had occupied Alcatraz. And it was in the heyday of activism, Indian activism. And I applied for a job. I called San Francisco State University, and told them I was interested in a job. And they says, "Oh no, you have to go to Cal Berkeley. They're hiring right now." So I applied at the University of California, Berkeley, was offered a job, picked up my family, and left, and never looked back, and went to the West Coast. I mean, it wasn't Horace Greeley telling me to go west, young man. It was just me saying, I want to go and be involved in Native American studies, a new academic discipline for which there were very few, if any, precedents. And so that's how
when you were at Oklahoma State, did you have a sense that was your major field, was it English?
It was English.
Your master's in English. Did you have a sort of inkling there when you were going through the program at Oklahoma State or were you beginning to focus in your mind that you wanted to be in Native American studies and teach Native American?
Actually, I did not. I just wanted to teach. But it wasn't Native American studies per se. I just assumed I'd be teaching in English somewhere, teaching English in some high school. I never ever dreamed of teaching at a university level. I just thought that I was no longer going to be teaching in the middle school or junior high, and high school, maybe a junior college setting. And I wasn't methodically preparing myself to teach at the higher education level. I was just getting a good education from Oklahoma State University, expanding upon my degree in English. I think I talked a little about growing up speaking Cheyenne and how important being able to communicate in the larger society is to me. And so I needed to develop my English speaking skills, my both the oral and written. And I still have to work on my oral communication skills at time. Written, I don't worry about too much. And it was I wanted to be a teacher my whole life. My grandfather and I he sort of put put that dream in my head when I was maybe in the third or fourth grade in school. And I decided at that early age that I wanted to be a teacher. And that was all that was in my mind as I was pursuing my master's degree at Oklahoma State.
Did any of your professors there, your major advisors, anyone that influence you in your time there that you can recall, any of the teachers that you had, professors, administrators?
Not really. Well, they were good. But I was working full time in the art department and I took a class a semester. And it was just a class a semester.
Is that right?
And I went to classes and really was never conscious of saying, I'm going to have a master's degree. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I wanted it. But it was just going to school and taking advantage of the opportunity that Oklahoma State University provided us with my husband working there, with my working there. And so I'd have to go back and review my transcript to see who even taught me to say, I don't know if that's indicative of extreme and severe memory loss or not, but I can remember professors from Southwestern, professors for my PhD, but somewhere or another, I'm trying to think of a name. Dr. J. McVicker was in the art department. He was probably the most influential in my life there. Provided me with the opportunity to go to school and so I remember him more so, and was influenced by his art. And I didn't really have much time for anything because I was working full time, rearing my family.
Working full time, going to school was probably a pretty good load. Well, do you recall? And it was really what was the culture? Was it a inviting culture for Native Americans on campus at that time? Do you recall a little bit about how supportive?
I don't think it was that inviting. If you wanted me to be frank.
Sure.
In fact, my late husband and I were asked to be the sponsors of the American Indian Club then. Dr. John Tipiconic was a student, and so there wasn't very much of a support system. Let me put it that way. Maybe it wasn't it wasn't inviting, but there wasn't the kind of academic structure that would be conducive to helping to get students to get acquainted with the university, to know that there might be tutoring services available to help them succeed in college. So there weren't really any kind of retention programs that I was aware of, except we were asked, would you sponsor our very small Indian club? And so we did. And I like to think that in that way we helped and provided a supportive atmosphere for the students at Oklahoma State University. But Oklahoma State University has come a long ways from that day in terms of the students, the caliber of the students that it has, the fact that it's got someone like Robin Williams there. I guess that's her, Robin. I don't know what her last name is. She's just a wonderful young woman who is a credit to Oklahoma State University, and and obviously has done an excellent job in working with the students in terms of the kind of teamwork and cohesiveness that I saw exhibited, not just at the awards ceremony, but at the powwow this past weekend. And it was the powwow was student organized, student run, student implemented, and there was Robin there assisting them. I think they had one other faculty sponsor there, but I did a faculty sponsor there, but I don't remember his name. And so from the late 60s to now, Oklahoma State University has certainly developed a very strong infrastructure for supporting Native American students and helping them to succeed through graduation.
Do you have any, outside the academic kind of arena, do you have any special memories or things you recall in special places on campus when you were there?
I recall the library.
That's good.
I spent a lot of time there when I could squeeze the time away from my family. I never spent much time at the student union. I couldn't. I didn't have the luxury of that time. When you work full time and go to school part time, I didn't have the luxury of getting acquainted with my professors, with other students, or places. I just know that it's a beautiful little campus, that it was a good place to be for me at that time, obviously. We lived in family and graduate housing, and then we moved out by the little lake out north of town.
Boomer Lake.
Yeah, and purchased a home out there and lived out there until I just decided that I was going to go and work in the area of Native American studies, and it was probably the best decision that I could have ever made for myself in terms of utilizing my academic background in a new and different way, because Native American studies was not a part of the regular curriculum of most colleges and universities, all of them maybe.
So you sort of dual family in terms of education. Your husband was he working his master's degree?
No, he didn't. He got a certificate or whatever it is from Oklahoma State University, Okmulgee, in drafting. So that was his field. And then he got a job in the public information office and he did the artwork for the campus.
I understand there's a story there about you saw some art when you received your recognition award there in the room there in the Oklahoma room. I'm trying to remember which one it was there in the student union, I think. Was that special for you to see your?
It was. But of course I've got paintings of my late husband at home, but it was nice to see that those paintings that Oklahoma State University owns are being displayed for other people to enjoy. My son saw them and he literally came running out of the room saying, "My dad's paintings are in here," and he was shouting to the world that there are 5 paintings of my dad's in here. And so he and the other child that attended the awards ceremony, my youngest Jackie, who works for a public broadcasting system in Las Vegas, they enjoyed seeing them. They took photographs of them. It was nice to receive an award in that room, because I certainly could feel my late husband's presence.
So I guess what I hear you saying, in addition to just being a commercial artist, he also then was an artist.
He was. He did. Yeah, he was a commercial artist, and he painted Indian. Well, I guess I call them Indian paintings.
Sure, that's wonderful. Well, so you kind of by a class of semester plan and so on, but you got your master's. Did you go directly from there to the University of New Mexico at that time, or was there
I actually left in 1970, about maybe although I had completed my degree requirements I left early. I left maybe in March or so to go teach at the University of California in Berkeley.
Mm.
And so I went directly from Stillwater to Berkeley. Talk about culture shock. Talk about all this transition from being a part-time student, a non-traditional student, name it, to a university where half my students, my Indian students, were out on Alcatraz. And I walked into my first higher education university classroom at UC Berkeley. There were no Indian students. Was highly dismayed. There were a lot of non-Indian students. And I thought, but I wanted to teach Indian students, and you too. But that really set the tone of the kind of, I guess, classroom composition that I had to, accept it. And because about 90% of my classes were non-Indian students. And so we went to Berkeley. It was a heyday of activism. Students began coming back from Alcatraz. I stayed there for 2.5 years and decided that the Bay Area was just not the place that this little Oklahoma Cheyenne gal wanted to be or could be.
You decided California's not for me. Then.
Yeah, and so I applied for 2 jobs. One at Bellingham, Washington, and at the University of Montana in Missoula. I was offered a job in both places. I had to make a choice. Took the one in Montana, which was the best one. But by that time at the University of California, Berkeley, Native American Studies was a part of the Ethnic Studies Department. The Ethnic Studies Department then had 4 programs, and it had Chicano Studies, as Hispanic Studies was then called, African American Studies, Asian Studies, and then lastly, Native American Studies. And it was called Native American Studies. Sometimes we use the word American Indian Studies, and I noticed lately that the term Indigenous Studies is being used more frequently to indicate it, this particular discipline. But when I left Berkeley, I had decided that I wanted to go to a place where Native American Studies stood alone, and that it wasn't a part of an ethnic studies program per se. That we as Indians deserve to have our own academic discipline, standalone programs, and went to the University of Montana in Missoula, and there was an American Indian Studies program there all by itself that offered 2 courses when I got there. 1 course and then an independent study course. And so by the time I left in 2000, we had a baccalaureate degree in Native American Studies. And
the new program then when you got there, you helped kind of build it from scratch.
Had 2 classes. And so I did it. I worked there off and on for 28 years. But I did leave to go to teach at Harvard. I left on an intergovernmental personnel assignment to direct the Office of Indian Education Programs for the Bureau of Indian Affairs. I taught federal appointment. I only lasted a year. But it was by my choice that I left. Bureaucracy was strange to me. I saw that change was not going to happen very quickly, that if change was going to occur, I was more apt to make those kinds of changes, suggest those kinds of changes in my classroom rather than sitting as the highest ranking Indian woman in Indian education for the Reagan administration, although I'm a Democrat. And so I was there a year and said, no. And furthermore, I didn't want to compromise my integrity anymore. Government has its own kind of personality, definitely has its own culture. So I went back to my classroom. And then somewhere along the way it was when we left Berkeley that my husband said, "You're teaching PhD level students. Haven't you ever thought of getting your own PhD?" And I said, "Of course I have. Yes, of course." He said, "Well, then it's time you go and get it." Well, he had some health issues by then. He had his kidneys that failed, and he was on a dialysis machine, which we had in the house. So we went back to Montana and got things ready and got our house ready for renting, and we moved down to Albuquerque, New Mexico. And that was in 1979, the fall of 1979. And I went to school full time. The university had given me 3 years to complete my doctorate degree, which was a very short period of time. So I said, okay. I had gone there the summer before to see whether or not I could still do the coursework. And I was very pleased when I got my 4.0 for the summer, even though the classes were very intensified. And we went down and I completed my coursework and sat for my comprehensives and was notified on December 5th, 1980 in the morning that I had passed my comps and I guess was officially a PhD candidate. That was 9 in the morning. And by 5 o'clock that evening, my husband passed away from a massive heart attack, a coronary. And that certainly left me again with some decisions. Do I go back to Montana without my degree? I could have gone back. But I looked at sort of a pattern, not the general pattern, a pattern that many of my peers had reached the ABD stage, where I was, all but dissertation. And they never got past the ABD stage, stopped there, never completed their degrees. And I weighed my options and I thought I can go back to my job. I was only on leave, 3 years leave to complete my doctorate degree, or I can go into debt and stay here and get it all done. So I went into debt. I applied for loans. I stayed and did my research on my dissertation and wrote my dissertation and got my Doctor of Philosophy degree in American Studies, which was the closest I could come to Native American Studies, in May of 1982. So I went back to the University of Montana then. And in 1986, I was asked to assume the directorship of the Office of Indian Education Programs. I sort of got ahead of myself. And then I went back to Montana. And then I was invited by Haskell Indian Nations University to come down as a visiting professor. And I did so for 2 years. But my reputation sort of became tainted with the Native community nationally because of my association with the federal government and the Bureau of Indian Affairs. So in 1992, I went back to Washington, D.C., but this time as the national coordinator of the American Indian Religious Freedom Act Coalition, and worked on trying to get amendments to the American Indian Religious Freedom Act that would guarantee First Amendment rights to American Indians. We're still working on trying to get that kind of First Amendment protection for Indian sacred sites. So the University of Montana was very good in letting me go off in what I call my own sabbaticals, and to go off to do other things. And finally in 2000, and then my husband, of course, had passed away in 1980. I went back to Missoula, Montana, the University of Montana, went off and did these other things, and then left in 2000 to go to MSU to fill the endowed chair. So that sort of really is the story of my career in higher education and what I've done with my life. it's strange that throughout that time, I never spent much time coming back to Oklahoma. I would come in occasionally for speeches. I would come in to visit schools when I directed the Office of Indian Education Programs. I came home for funerals. It was just almost as if when I left in 1970 that I just severed uh, my cultural umbilical cord and left. Now I've reconnected that umbilical cord. I've made those connections back to Oklahoma State, a fine school, to Western Oklahoma here, and to contributing what I can to help the Cheyenne Arapaho tribes have their own college.
You back up into your umbilical cord concept, Dr. Mann. Can we talk just briefly a little bit about your being raised? It seems like, and correct me please, that you have sort of lived in two cultures, in terms of the Native American culture and more traditional Native American culture, where you grew up with your great-grandmother and your grandmother and your parents. And I understand, I think from our previous conversation, that your mother even was, I think, in the Mennonite church, and your father. So you've got the languages, the culture, the religion. Could you explain a little bit about that dichotomy in your life?
Actually, maybe Jerry, I don't see it as much of a dichotomy as two parts of me that make a whole, that make me complete as to who I am. One of the teachings of our elders is that you live in harmony and in concert with the time in which you live and the place in which you live. And so that, and we were comfortable with change on our own terms. And that cultures continue to evolve. And assuredly, the kind of culture that I live as a Cheyenne woman right now is dramatically different from that of my great grandmother, White Buffalo woman. She never went to a I guess a public school, as I did. But the times have changed. I am very blessed to have had the kind of cultural upbringing that I did from family, from my parents, from my grandfather, and all those around me. But at the same time, even though my grandfather showed up at the doors of Chilocco Indian School and said, I'm going to only come to school, but I'm going to leave when I want, when students were expected to have signed contracts by parents to stay for 3 years. And he said, I want to be educated, but I'll leave when I want. He and his friend Amos Whitehawk showed up at the gates, I found out. And so I think I'm a rebel like my grandfather. Life is going to be on my terms, and as much as I can dictate it. And so life has been on my terms. I am so proud to be Cheyenne. I can't never think of anything but being Cheyenne. I speak my language. I think I know about our culture. I have participated in our highest ceremony as a woman. I like to think that I'm culturally and spiritually grounded in my own traditions as a Cheyenne woman. But at the same time, I have the best education that the public schools could have offered me, and it's there's that's to be expected.
You had, as I recall from our previous conversation, Dr. Mann, you had perhaps a little bit unusual. Your parents were very strong in getting an education. Going to school, I think you told a story about it. In the fourth grade, you went home, maybe crying when you didn't go back.
That was my grandfather. That was when I decided to be a teacher.
And he told you to go back, stay in school, and then go on. So you probably had. Do you feel like you had supported home for education? It was perhaps a little different, maybe than some.
I did. I had support for education in terms of a public education, but I also had support for education continuing to be taught. Our traditions as Cheyenne people. My dad's first cousin, actually my aunt, would be his sister, was brought in to essentially homeschooled me in Cheyenne culture after I got off the bus and before I went to bed every night and on weekends. And so my parents did believe in education, both in a cultural sense and in terms of what is required to be educated in, from our perspective of white, of mainstream education. Um, so, yes, I've had a very supportive environment about education. I've been encouraged to acquire the best education that I could, but implicit in that is to be the best person that you can possibly be. We want you to be educated, but if you can't be educated, then you've got to be the best Cheyenne, best human being. You're blessed with a Cheyenne heart. You just have to be the best person that you can possibly be. And being that best person is you exemplify our values of generosity, of service, uh, all of those virtues that we learn about in wherever we learn them in church or and so yeah, I had
The bicultures. Did you ever attend church with your mother? Church?
of
You
course.
chuckle. There's got to be a story here.
I think it's only answered, of course. I mean, she was my mother. Uh, she was my mother. I went to Mennonite church with her every Sunday, and I really enjoyed it. And there was a lay minister, the late Homer Hart, who would preach in Cheyenne and interpret for the preacher. I would go to the Indian Baptist church with my mother's aunt, whose husband had attended Carlisle, and they lived in Watonga. And so, oh yeah, I can recite scripture from the Bible. I can. I grew up with that very strong Christian underpinning. But that's alongside my very strong cultural underpinning of my parents attending Native American church ceremonies, at least my father and my grandfather, or going with the family to camp where we held our major ceremonies. I think the greatest gift that my family has given me was this freedom to go and pray in whatever way I wanted to, which I still do. I'm considered a Sundance woman now. I go to our Sundance ceremonies, but I don't necessarily go to church every Sunday, but I go when people invite me.
Sort of jump backward, but back in the education, struck with how it's impacted your life. And now as a president of the tribal college, what do you feel should Native American students be studying? That's what professions should they be going into? Do you have a feeling about that?
I have a very strong feeling about what students in a tribal college should be studying. They should be studying their own languages. They should be studying their own cultural histories. They should be studying their own worldviews. They should be studying about their contemporary status in modern day America. They should study about their own tribal government. They should know who they are as Cheyennes and Arapahoes and be very familiar with that and be very competent, intellectually competent in that area. At the same time, that other tribe, I expect them to get a good general education. I expect them to learn to read, to write, to be critically analytical, to do math, to learn the skills that are necessary for any kind of profession, and that they might elect to choose. I'd like to think maybe at some point in time that we will have programs, and we have submitted our first associate degree in tribal administration, and hopefully we'll train students for jobs in tribal government and our casinos and operating and running our own programs, and so that running our own federal programs. I mean, so that is what I see in this tribal administration and management degree, that we train our own to go back in and operate our own programs, and to reinforce this concept of sovereignty that we have as the Cheyenne and Arapaho tribes. Uh, I want the best for them. I want them to just be the best as they can possibly be and learn all they can in terms of traditional knowledge, but all that they need to know in terms of the skills that are necessary for being self-sufficient, empowered individuals and who can who can live very well in the 21st century.
Does your curriculum, does it combine with the general education curriculum? Does it lead to, is it a bachelor's degree or a 2-year degree program?
It's a 2-year degree. We're a tribal college, a 2-year degree granting institution. Until we become independent and have our own accreditation, we are using the accreditation umbrella of Southwestern Oklahoma State University. Our students are dually enrolled as students at Southwestern and students in the tribal college. And so, whereas we provide that emphasis in studying about American Indians, they also have to fulfill the requirements to have a very strong general education background too.
Then they can build on that to a 4-year degree program if they want from there. Great. Just in your, Dr. Mann, you have such a broad grasp of this, but sort of from what you've seen in different areas, do American Indian students today have the adequate opportunities, encouragement, support to obtain degrees that they need?
I wish they had more. I like to think that as our students graduate from degrees here, that they will serve as those viable, valuable role models to say, I can be like him or her. They've got a degree from the tribal college. So would I. I believe that supportive environment is there, but it needs to be strengthened. That we all need to encourage our young people from Head Start on up, that they truly represent our future and our continuity as a people, and that education is a key to their very survival, and that alongside getting a very good college education, whether it is at the associate degree level or at the baccalaureate level or even beyond into graduate degrees, that they need to get that, because we expect them to come back and be involved in our tribal government. We expect them to continue to come back to be involved in our traditional ceremonies and ways of life. I expect much from them. But my grandparents expected the same from me, and their grandparents before them expected the same thing from them. We have a responsibility to our ancestors, and that responsibility also extends forward to those that have yet to come to walk on this good earth with us. And I like to think that we're building this college for the next generations, this generation, but primarily for those that come after them, for the small ones. So, yeah.
Well, we re-texted you a lot of things in 2 interviews, but anything, Dr. Mann, that you, in these subjects you can talk about that you want to share with us, or something we haven't covered that you'd like to?
You haven't left anything uncovered, Jerry.
Well, thank you very much.